Hey everyone, I've got an exciting new tutorial for you. Let's get ready. Take a look at this. I've got an interesting tutorial for you. Cinema 4D, and the version I'm using is Cinema 4D R13, and it doesn't involve any additional plugins or aftermarket add-ons. And this tutorial, what it's going to do is going to have to do with simulating water drops and hitting on a surface and producing ripple effects. So let's get started. How are we going to achieve this? Well, let's begin by creating a box. We're going to use 2 cubes for this. So we'll scale this out and give it the resemblance of a box. We're going to duplicate this by control, clicking and dragging. And the second cube that we're going to use it to reduce or subtract an area from inside this first box. So we'll go ahead and grab ourselves a bool, and with use of bools, you want to keep the area on the outside. So that would be the first item of the primitives that we're going to place in the bool. We'll drag the second cube beneath the first cube, and if we select our bool and rotate up, you'll see that we've hollowed this box out nicely. Now we're going to take the first and second cube and we're going to apply a fillet to those, and we're going to increase the subdivisions to about 20, and we're going to do that for both of them. Fillet it, and we're going to increase the subdivisions about 20, and you can see now if we select our bool, we've got a nice hollowed out box with a nice contoured edge and a nice curved radius up here at top. We're going to do that out so you can get a look at it. And this is going to be like a tub or some type of container that would be suitable to hold a quantity of water. So we're going to create 2 new textures. We're going to apply a texture on the outside of the box, and we're going to apply a texture on the inside of the box. So double click down here, and this first texture we're going to go in. We're going to leave all the settings as default. We're going to select our color, and we're going to move it up to a pure white. And at that point we're going to take our inside cube or our outside cube, and we're going to apply that texture to the outside cube. We're going to control click and drag to duplicate the second color, and we're going to double click it, and we're going to change this color to a blue color. So select the color channel and find a color blue that's suitable for you. I'm going to use something about like this, and I'll answer okay to get out of there. In the second cube, we're going to apply that color to it. It's going to be representative of the inside. You can see we've got an outside color, we've got an inside color. Alright, so at this point we can collapse our bool, and now what we're going to do is we're going to create a plane, and we're going to place it inside this cube, and it will resemble a surface area that water droplets will hit. So it's going to be representative of a quantity of water contained in this box. So let's drop ourselves in a plane, and we're going to look at this from above, and we're going to resize that plane so that it just intersects the inside of that box and does not intersect the outside. Okay, so we're intersecting all areas of the inside. Now for the water effect to have a good believability factor, we need to increase these segments of the plane. I'm going to knock them up to about 100 on both height and width. And you see we now have a lot more detail to work with in regards to a ripple. You can lower that down to about 80 and get away with it. 100 I found seems to work just about right. So we're going to move that plane up to the top, or almost to the top, so that it would appear that our container is almost full. And you want to make sure, if I zoom in on this corner here, that your plane has expanded out enough so that it's intersecting that corner, yet not so much that it's sticking outside of your container box. Alright, so we need a few other things. We need light to make this believable so that we can have some reflections and glimmer on the water. So I'm going to add a basic 3-point light system here. I'm just going to make some lights, and we're going to move these guys all out a little bit. I'll control click each of them, and we're going to move them up so that we've got a way to cast a shadow. Now, to cast shadows, I think what I'll do is I'll use this back light that's further from us. I'll select it, and I'm going to go to Shadow. I'm going to tell it to apply a soft shadow map. I'm going to knock its density down to about 85%. Now I'm going to control click these other two lights, and I'm going to tell them under the General tab to make their intensity about 60%. That way they're not as bright as our primary light that's casting a shadow. So if we zoom in on this guy, we'll see that when we render it, we've got some shadows happening on the inside here. Now one more thing we need is a surface, a table surface. So I'm going to drop another cube in here. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit larger than the water container. Thin it down a touch. And then we're going to drop it down so that it's sitting just below the surface of this container. And we can go into this front view and move that up so that it's just intersecting this. So we look pretty good right there. Alright, so if I run a render on that, you'll see that we're casting a shadow, and our box would appear to be sitting on this surface. Alright, I'm going to also drop this white surface on here so that we've got some color, and I think that looks pretty good. Alright, so we've got our plane. We're going to rename this to water surface. And we're going to take our lights, we'll control click these guys, and we'll group these guys so that they occupy one element in our manager here. Okay, so we've got our bool, which is our box. We've got our water surface, which is our plane. We've got our cube, which is our floor. So let's rename that floor. Alright. Now, here's what we're going to need to do. We're going to, like I said, I'm using Cinema 14 R13, or Cinema 4D R13 Studio version. So if you come under Create, Load Materials, Visualize Materials, we've got an area of liquids, and we're going to use the one called Water Pool. And I found this makes a nice water surface. So we're going to take that water surface, we're going to drag this onto our water surface. Now if I zoom in and we get a little render here, you'll see that we've got our container with our water plane with the surface texture of the water material applied to it. So we need to do another thing. We need to double click our material, we need to select our displacement channel, put a check beside it, and we're going to go under right here where it says texture and jump down to where it says effects, and we're going to select ripple. So displacement, effects, ripple. Okay. Now what we're going to do is to access other features of this, we need to click the word ripple under the texture area, and it's going to bring up some more settings that we can adjust. Now for my experimentation, I've got a few settings at work. This will give us a good starting point. You can experiment with them at your own leisure. But in any case, here's what I've got. I've got under displacement, I've got for wave length, I've got 25. Okay. For speed, I've got 150. For amplitude, I've got 60. For fall off, I have 5, the default. And for minimum strength, I've got 10. Okay. Now, period, what that has to do with how many rings there are in a ripple as it's created. So we're going to do 3. And at this point, we're going to need to come back in a little bit and fill out the object and the particles information, but we don't have that information created yet. So we'll be back and finish that here shortly. So we've got that. You'll notice that there's no changes if we render that out at this point. The renders, if later on in this project when you attempt to render out one and you don't see any ripples occurring, you can't do it from your built-in renderer that shows within your work area. You have to do it through the picture viewer render. So keep that in mind. If you render it out and you don't see ripples, remember to render it to your picture viewer. Alright, so now what do we need? We need to create ourselves a water drop. And this is pretty straightforward. We're going to create a sphere, and we're going to leave the segments at the default, and we're going to make sure we have render perfect selected. At this point, we're going to go into and choose the taper modifier, and we're going to drag our sphere into our taper modifier. Alright, the mode we need to change to unlimited, and we also want to check fillet. Okay, now as you begin to adjust your strength, I've got this backwards. I need to drag my taper onto my sphere. Okay, so remember that, drag your taper modifier onto your sphere. I had it backwards in that first illustration. So you can see as we modify the strength that our sphere is now being tapered. So we want that to have somewhat of a resemblance of a water drop, and I think that's pretty good. You can play with the curvature more or less, and I think that'll be pretty good for this example. Alright, so we need to make this an editable object so that we can further scale it down so that it's appropriate for the scale of what we're working with. But you cannot use, if you would typically right click an object and choose group and delete, or connect objects and delete, you can't do that. You'll have to go up under here under command, or I'm sorry, under mesh conversions and choose connect state to object. So if we do that, you'll see that we've created a new editable object that is of the shape and dimensions of this water drop that we've created, and it used these two attributes to create this new object. So at this point we can delete the sphere and the taper modifier, and then what we're left with is this. So we can move this guy up, and what we need to do, we need to shrink that down in size. So if we take our size, we can drag this guy down, change all of its dimensions. I want this to be nice and small on the scale of a water droplet in regards to its size in relation to this container. And that's still pretty big, kind of fat. So we're going to scale that up. We're going to keep scaling it down. And if you don't get this right, you can end up with a flat water droplet. So you just keep modifying it, keep bringing it down and down, and keep rotating it around and zooming in on it so that you can see that your dimensions are appropriate. And we're looking pretty good in regards to the size of a water drop in relation to our tank that's going to catch this. Alright, so I'm going to bring that up, I'm going to move it up, and we'll get a look at it up here. Okay, so there's our water drop. And we're going to apply a water texture to that. We're going to use this same texture, except we're not going to put a displacement on it. So I'm going to go, let me rename this one first, and we'll call this water surface. Alright, and then we'll go under here and create low material, visualize materials, liquid, and water pool. Okay, we're going to call this water drop. Okay, so now we've got us a water drop. We're going to leave everything the same with this one, and we're not going to modify any of its attributes. So we're going to take that sphere, select it, and we're going to put the water drop on the sphere. So now if we render this, we'll get a look at our water drop. Okay. Now we need a lot of water drops to hit this surface so that we can get the ripple effect. So what we'll do next is, if we go under to simulate particles, we can add an emitter, and this is going to allow us to replicate many water drops and control the fashion and speed that they fall. So we'll add an emitter, and you'll see that by default it's added an emitter. However, the emitter is pointing along this blue z-axis, and we need to rotate that downward so it's aimed towards the water. So we'll select it, and we're going to shift drag until we get a -90 rotation, and then I'm going to move this emitter up. Okay. At this point we need to tell the emitter what to emit. By default, if I'm going to rewind this and hit play, you'll see that it's just dropping random emitter particles. So I'm going to rewind that. We're going to tell this emitter that the sphere is going to be what it's to emit. So drag the sphere into the emitter, and then at this point we're going to rewind and hit play, and you'll see that we're still seeing the generic emitter particles. We need to select that emitter and tell it to show objects, and at this point it's going to show us the water drops that it's emitting as its particles. So I'll rewind it and hit play, and at this point you'll be able to see we've got water drops dripping, and What we need to do beyond this point is select our emitter, and then under the emitter tab, change its X and Y size so that it just fits within the size of our container that's going to hold this water. So I'm going to stretch this out, and stretch this out. We want this just to be just inside the confines of that water container, and that looks just about right. So if I hit rewind and hit play, you'll see that now all of our water drops are emitting from the emitter in the dimensions that we've scaled it so that they would have hit in the surface of this box collecting water. Another thing we need to do is, while we've got our emitter selected, click on particles, and we're going to tell it I have a birth rate of 15. Make these match, and we're going to tell the visibility to be 100%. That's basically the opacity or the transparency of the raindrops themselves. We're going to have it start on frame 0. That's at the very beginning. This emitter will begin emitting water droplets. And we're going to tell it to stop at the last frame of the length of our timeline, which is 400. So we're going to adjust that to 400. And that stop emission should be the length of your movie, or whenever you'd rather the emitter to stop emission. Okay. Now we've got a lifetime, which needs to be about, I'm going to say about 20. You may adjust this up or down a few, depending on the height that your emitter is from your water surface. And that 20 means approximately 20 frames, frame 1 through frame 20. For example, let me tell the lifetime to be 5 frames. If I push play, you'll see how they're stopping about 5 frames from when they begin. If we adjust this lifetime to 15, and I rewind it and play, you'll see now they're falling further. Okay, we need them to fall to where they just go beyond this plane that's going to be representative of our water surface. So I'm going to keep inching this up slowly just to see where it ends. We see they're stopping just a little bit too soon still. So what I'm going to do before I commit here is I'm going to raise my water drops up, all right, so that I can see them fall for a little bit longer. And I'm going to adjust my lifetime to 50. Hit play. And see they're stopping just a little bit too soon, so I'm going to adjust my lifetime up to 60. Rewind it. And they look like they're all hitting and penetrating the water surface pretty good. I might go up to 65 just to be safe. And I think we're looking pretty good there. One thing you can do is zoom back and check to see if they're falling through. And they don't look like they're falling through the floor, because that lifetime has an impact on how long or how many resources are used, your processor and your memory and all that. So if they're falling at a lifetime of, let's say, 1,000, they're going to fall clean on down. They're going to fall out of sight, but your processor and still going to be impacted by that, because it's going to be rendering all that, although you'd never see them. Okay, so one more thing we need to do is give our speed about 800. I found this looks pretty natural. If I hit play now, you'll see they're falling at a much more natural rate. You may need to bump that up or down 100 or 200, play with it and see what results you get. And then under variation, I've got the speed variation. I'm going to set that at 25%. So the speed varies randomly. Some are falling a touch faster, some are falling a touch slower, in a 25% difference. The rotation, I'm going to leave that variation at 100% because I have no rotation, right? And I'm going to have the N scale variation set at 5%. So they're going to get, they'll be a little bigger or a little smaller depending on the random attributes that are selected by Cinema 4D. So if I rewind this, get ourselves zoomed in where we don't see the emitter, but we can see where the water's initiating, and hit play, you'll see that we've got water falling in a nice speedy way where we still see it, and as it impacts this water surface, we're going to begin to see ripples. So, like I said earlier, the only way you'll be able to see ripples is if you render it through your picture viewer. You won't be able to see them if you render through your built-in viewer within your workspace. However, if we render it now, you'll see that there are no water ripples, and we need to tell our texture our water surface, we need to tell that texture what is going to create ripples. Okay, so we've got to remember that our water surface is this plane. That is the element that is going to be impacted and ripple. And the emitter is going to be the object that creates the ripples. So if we edit our water surface texture, under displacement, click ripple, and you'll see we have two areas that we need to complete. We've got object and particles. So the object that is going to ripple is going to be our water surface. You see how that didn't take? I had this little no can do logo. What that means is we need to make this editable. So select it, right click it, choose make editable. Now at this point it will be receptive to that object. The water surface needs to be under the object field. Now the emitter will be the area for our particles. So I think we're all set there. If I rewind and hit play, water drops are hitting. Now if we hit our picture view and render that, you'll see now we're beginning to get water ripples that are impacting on that plane. Get a different view of it here. I'll rewind it one more time and give it a render. You'll see how we've got some that have just initially hit and now they're beginning to put ripples on. You see a water drop here, and you see some penetrating beneath the surface. What that has to do with under your emitter is that lifetime. If that lifetime is shorter, those water drops will disappear sooner after they hit the surface of the plane. So we can try to back that up again to about 60. Rewind that, hit play, and I'll go ahead and render that out again. And you'll see that this one is still impacted, yet it's still visible underneath the water surface. Here's one that's just about to hit. So let's knock that back, the lifetime, back to about 51. Rewind that, hit play, and let's take a render of that look. And you'll see that they mostly disappeared at this point after they've interacted with the plane of our water surface. Now, some will penetrate and you'll see them. Some won't even make it to the water surface because under this lifetime, just at the area of the emitter that they're being generated, some are, because they're offset, some are beginning a little higher up, some are beginning a little lower down. And so the ones that are emitted initially, a little bit lower down will be the ones that you see penetrating a little deeper into the water surface. So if I rewind, let me rewind here and let it run for a few minutes, and you see we're getting lots of ripples generated. If I hit render, you'll see that those water ripples have generated and now begin to produce some turbulence on this surface here. So what I'll go ahead and do is I'll go ahead and save this file. We'll call this water project. Alright, and I'll make this file available in the description below, so anybody who would like to download it and play with the one that we've created here in this lesson, and then you can adjust all your parameters here. And on the other hand, at least this will give you some insight as to a way to get started by manipulating these variables. And don't forget, you've got underneath your displacement area here, under your ripple feature, some other attributes you can play with to maybe make the waves that the ripples produce a little bit higher. You can make the ripples move a little faster. The wave length, you can make the circles move further out before they dissipate. You've got the fall off is the basically the softness of the amplitude and how far those ripples move out before they begin to stop and begin to dissipate. So just to give you a good idea, I'll go ahead and render this out, and then I'll insert this at the beginning of the video so that you can see it in its full glory. So I hope this helps you guys. It's I found it to be a pretty neat little feature. With a little bit of creative thinking, it can go a long way. And this would be something you might want to use in any kind of scene where you, rather than use a box, for example, you could motion track some footage, say a parking lot, have your camera shot low down on the ground by the asphalt, and maybe motion track this plane right at ground level, and you could produce like water drops hitting on a rainy day out on the street or on the sidewalk, or you could even invert this and have it appear that these are hitting on a sheet of glass, and you can reduce that ripple and its intensity. Do quite a few neat little things with it. So hope this helps. If you guys like my videos, appreciate a thumbs up. And remember, if you want to see more in the future, please subscribe. Alrighty, talk to you later. Bye-bye.